Good morning. Yesterday we talked about 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and we asked the question, what three things can we take away from 1 Corinthians chapter 9? And we mentioned that first Paul is talking about evangelism with integrity, second, relationship with adaptability, and the third we want to talk about is personal holiness with single-mindedness. Personal holiness with single-mindedness. We already talked about the first two things, so we'll focus on the third, personal holiness and single-mindedness, which Paul emphasizes beginning at verse 24 in 9th chapter of 1 Corinthians. Let me read that verse for all of us. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run up, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the game goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man beating the air. No, I beat my body and make it my slave so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. For St. Paul, Christian pilgrimage is not simply entering into rest, have peace with God, and enjoy the personal piety for your own sake. It is possible that one can have an assurance of salvation, and yet one can be limited with his own resources and live for your own glory. One can become complacent. Just because you have already entered into rest with God and peace with God, you have the salvation. One can become complacent. One can become very much unproductive, useless for God's kingdom, but maybe useful for oneself. One can also become lazy. Yes, he may be fit for salvation, but he or she may not be spiritually fit. So Paul is talking about spiritual fitness. Just like physical fitness for an athlete is not something that one can gain with shortcut. There is no shortcut to physical fitness. So there is no shortcut to spiritual fitness. For Paul, Christian pilgrimage is like a race. It's a place where one has entered into competitions. What kind of competition? A competition where you have the opportunity to show the best of your ability for a public display, and so as to be obedient and faithful to God's call, as well as to be a great encouragement to others. It's a place of accountability. It's also a place of receiving reward. There is a reward. And he says that this reward, they do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever, a reward that is eternal. So Paul is saying that I just don't run like running aimlessly. I'm not chasing after the wind. I'm not beating the air, but I rather beat my body. In other words, he says, I subordinate my body to make it slave to the purpose and to the goal, so that I may be productive, I may be useful, that my life here on this earth is fully actualizes its potential for God's purposes. I live it for the glory of God. He says, yes, I'm afraid that while I'm trying to preach to others, I may not be disqualified for the prize, and so I make my body as a slave. Sometimes we as a Christian leaders, we can become a liability rather than a blessing. So also a Christian institution or a church can become a liability if it becomes a self-serving institutions. Board meetings or committee meetings can become a liability if it is only meeting and producing nothing. It is possible that we can just come together, have a wonderful lunch and have a meeting, and then go back and forget about it. It's possible that you and I may receive the grace of God and just keep the grace of God in vain, never use it. Apply it for self, but not use it for others. Paul was very much concerned about that this first century Christian at Corinth, they may not become people who are unproductive and ineffective and not useful for God. So through his own life, Paul is trying to exhibit, that it is so important for every child of God to exercise the personal holiness and single-mindedness. We all must remember that on the one hand, we should enjoy the rest and peace in God. We should be calm and quiet. We should be at rest within. On the other hand, there must be passion. There must be eagerness, enthusiasm, hard work, a desire to be productive and useful and run like athletes running in race. It's a wonderful exhortation that Paul brings to you and me. May God help us as you listen to this message. May you be rejuvenated and feel enthusiastic for this day and the days to come. May God bless you. Blessings.